everyone, and welcome to the virtual Morris Tech Meetup with Rosemary Becchi today. So it should be a great event. So Mark and I are actually sitting here together, which we haven't seen much of Mark since
quite
COVID
some time.
started. Yes. Yep. So it's good to actually have someone here with me in my home here in Chatham, and we're super pleased to have Rosemary here today as well. But you know, as usual, we'll get started with some housekeeping. Here's your organizers. Mark, who's actually sitting here. I mentioned that. Nancy Rago, who is instrumental in setting all this up, and Mark Annette, who he's actually not here today, but he's been super helpful, as you all know. And this event and this meetup, as you know, is completely pro bono. Nobody's really making any money or doing anything other than trying to help entrepreneurs with it. So here's our next events. So today's event, by the way, shouldn't be more than an hour. It should be less than an hour. And what we'll do is we'll have a conversation with Rosemary, and then we'll take some questions from you. And before I forget, the questions from you can be put in YouTube. It's in the comments section in YouTube. You can put the questions, and they will come through to us, and we will. If we have time, we'll ask Rosemary these questions. So get in there. So here's our next events. We actually have a charity event, which is really my pet project, is a charity called Tri-County Scholarship Fund. And previously we would have the chili bowl, but this year, for obvious reasons, we won't be eating chili out of a shared pot. And it just doesn't seem like the wise thing to do. So instead, we're having this virtual event, which is this Monday at 6:45 p.m. It's a 1-hour virtual event. You should definitely check it out. There's kids on there that have received scholarships. Usually K through 8 young kids get scholarships to private schools, and they come from not the greatest school district, and we're putting them in a fantastic school. And some of them will give speeches, and you'll see the impact that it makes. So please have a look at the event, and hopefully that'll inspire you to donate as well. So we'll see about that. And then we have another event set up for November 17th at 4 p.m. And that's actually a really interesting one. We have Tracy Blowers from Microsoft on the event, and she will talk about the work from home culture and the problems and issues with, you know, the COVID work from home culture. She's actually working heavily with Microsoft Teams and the group at Microsoft that deploys Teams. And they've done all sorts of studies and things on the psychological aspects of having to work from home and not seeing people and all that. I'm sure you've heard quite a bit about it. And anyway, it's maybe actually undercovered in this whole thing. It's like, what's the psychological impact of all this? Anyway, she'll discuss that and the research that Microsoft has done to that end on November 17th at 4 p.m. So we really hope you can join us for that. Okay, so some of the resources. This is obviously our website, meetup.com, Morris Meetup. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, actually somewhat regularly now that Nancy actually
she's been doing a great job.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Nancy. And then usually we meet at Fairleigh Dickinson, and we really hope to.
I hope we could get back soon.
I hope we can get back soon. I don't like sitting here with just Mark, so it would be really nice to get back to Fairleigh Dickinson sometime soon, and especially the bar afterwards. I had to put a bar comment in. Anyway. So there's also a link to New Jersey Tech Weekly. I think Esther's on, and the New Jersey Technology Council, and Mario over at Tech Lunch is a big friend of ours as well. So check
actually
out those links.
The New Jersey Tech Council is now called United New Jersey. So we're gonna have to.
I have the right logo, but we had the wrong.
Tech United New Jersey. So we're gonna have to change that link up.
Yeah. So, and then of course our sponsors. We wouldn't be able to do this without the sponsors. Especially the Morris County Economic Development Corporation that funds a great deal of the Morris Tech Meetup. And then my company's Enterprises, Mark's Linksys, and then Fairleigh's up there, as well as New Jersey Tech Weekly. So thanks to all these community partners and sponsors, they kind of make it possible. And as I said, it's completely pro bono. It's just, we're just kind of paying the bills. We're just kind of paying the bills with the sponsorships and so on. So, so anyway, check out our sponsors, and then we're going to go right into our conversation with Rosemary Becchi, and I will add her to the conversation right now, and we'll get right into it. Hang on just 1 second while we change the broadcast. This is, by the way, we're using something called StreamYard for the broadcast. It's really fantastic. All right, here comes Rosemary.
Hey there.
Hi, Rosemary.
Hi.
And we were just talking before. You're in Parsippany right now, and where are you from originally?
Well, first, thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to talk with everyone this afternoon. So our campaign offices, as we were talking about earlier, are in Parsippany, right there in Lanadex Plaza. And originally, I'm actually from Bensalem, Pennsylvania, right off a street road, off of I-95.
So, rather than do the big, long introduction with all your accolades, why don't we just talk about your background before we get started into, the whole state of New Jersey entrepreneurship, which at Morris Tech Meetup, we're very interested in the state of entrepreneurship here in New Jersey, obviously. So other than running for Congress, and we'll get into that a little bit, what's your background other than that? And I know some of it, but I'll leave it to you to tell us.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So my background is I'm a tax lawyer. And I started my career at the IRS in the Office of Chief Counsel, where I mostly worked on regulations and rulings for taxpayers. But then from there, I had the great pleasure. I actually went up to the U.S. Senate and worked in the Senate Finance Committee as tax counsel. And while I was there, I had the great opportunity to co-author the 529 college savings plans. It's actually something that's very near and dear to my heart, because I was one of those kids that graduated with over $100,000 of debt. And I knew the difference that something like that could make if families could save on a regular basis for their future. But after leaving the Senate Finance Committee, I've had a variety of jobs. I worked in corporate America, as well as working in law firms as a partner. And right now I'm senior counsel to Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, and Schreck.
Okay, great. Very cool. So do you consider yourself an entrepreneur? Like you're a partner at the firm? So isn't that somewhat of an entrepreneurial position?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the practice of law is like every other business. You've got to generate sales. You've got to, balance your resources. You've got to market yourself. And I'm actually very fortunate that I have two business partners that we run a practice together, the three of us. And I'm the guy that manages the P&L. And I watch it very carefully, and I worry about what we're spending and how we're spending it and things like that. And so, and again, it's like any other business. You have good years, bad years. You learn to, like right now, reinvent yourself through COVID. We've all found that we've needed to do that. So I do think the practice of the law is very much an entrepreneurial endeavor.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. And I should have mentioned something about the 529s. I have two kids in college, so I'm pretty broke. Mark's buying.
I did my first withdrawal this year. It was very exciting. So
no, you know what? We've been saving. I have three kids, so we've been saving. We've been holding back on the 529 so we can save it for the last kid. So we're almost there. Anyway, and then. In terms of entrepreneurship, like New Jersey really at some point was a super hotbed for entrepreneurship. And I'd like to say it still is, but maybe it's not quite Silicon Valley or Silicon Alley right now. Let's put it that way. So what do you think? Just looking back, what do you think made New Jersey like such a hotbed to begin with? And it was a lot of the drug companies and a lot of especially like technology, even back ends from larger companies came here.
And telecommunications.
Yep.
What do you think that was that made it successful in the past? And then later we'll talk about what's going to make it awesome in the future.
I mean, I think that, in the past, it's proximity to, other places like New York and New Jersey's resources, all made it a hotbed for a very, long time. We have an incredible school system and education system that for many years, attracted people here. So, to a certain extent, it really does still attract people. And I know we're going to talk about it, but I certainly think that what does with the, detracts people from New Jersey is our high cost of living and our taxes. I mean, it's pretty simple and straightforward.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, especially when we actually had a conversation at an event, and especially when you consider like the fact that you have to pay for all these things and the high cost of living around everything, like in New Jersey. Like we even end up paying more for college, if you want to talk about college, because like they look at how much you make and then you pay more if you make more, right? So anyway, maybe we'll come back to that in a little bit. So looking at the current situation, maybe on a federal level, like what do you think? Do you think that there's good mechanisms in place for entrepreneurs, and that the country, and you can talk about New Jersey too, the country and state is supportive of entrepreneurship or not, or a mixed bag? What do you think, where are we at now?
So a couple things here. I do think, our current tax code and some of the changes, that were made in 2017 were very beneficial, right? The lower rates, provisions that allowed for earnings to be repatriated from abroad, and again, the lower corporate rates, as well as the lower rates for pass-through businesses and things like that. I also think another important thing at the federal level that's happened under the current administration is the reduction in some of the regulatory burden. I think that's been super helpful, and I think it's something that people don't realize has happened. I certainly I do a lot of my work in the regulatory space, and I see the difference it's kind of had on businesses to have less burden there. But and those are certainly the things that have been helpful. I do think that, and I know we're going to talk about it, but like even in the context of COVID, I think some of the programs that were unveiled, were initially very, very helpful to businesses, like the PPP program, as well as, the enhancement of the EIDL program and things like that, were certainly helpful. But again, and you kind of compare that to New Jersey, and you look at kind of what's happening with our taxes here as they continue to go up and our regulatory burden continues to go up. It's kind of not very helpful. And that's why I think we continue to see businesses moving out of New Jersey, as well as individuals. And it's actually, just to take a minute and talk about it, I had actually founded an organization several years ago, was called Jersey First, with the whole idea to start advocating for lower taxes and less spending. And what we did with that organization was we really tried to raise money and elect people that really truly believed that, lower taxes and less spending was the way to go in New Jersey. Because, again, I it's all the time wherever I go, I hear about people who say, once my kids are done high school, I'm out. and it's kind of a sad phenomenon where we want people to stay. We want businesses to stay here. We do have incredible resources and proximity, to other places and great ports and things like that. And so, and there's a lot of opportunity here. It's just the taxes and the regulations drive people away.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot in that. So let's talk about the COVID stuff maybe first. So I own a small business. We got a PPP loan. It was very helpful, and I think it was helpful to a lot of entrepreneurs and small businesses as well. But like there was that New Jersey CARES Act, the CARES Act that's at the federal level, and like Morris County didn't really get much out of that. I know that. Any comments about that and what we could have done differently, perhaps, to get recognized?
Yeah, and I mean, this is absolutely where my opponent has completely failed the people of Morris County. Morris County got zero money, direct money, from the CARES Act, and it was based on an allocation. And it was based on population. So if you had more than 500,000, you got direct funding versus less than. And I really think that, this is where my experience comes in knowing how the federal government works and knowing some of those processes. What should have happened is somebody should have been advocating for a change in that formula. And so, because what we had happen is that counties like Passaic County got $87 million of direct funding. And again, Morris County got nothing. And so I think that is a failure. I also think it's worth mentioning, too, that, there was other monies that came via the CARES Act that the governor still has. And I think that it's incumbent upon our leaders to really push him to distribute those monies as well, because I think businesses need them, particularly now. I mean, we all know, so many of our restaurants and businesses are limited in terms of, what they can do at the moment, and they're really hurting. So I would be an advocate for, trying to release more of that money and get it to the people that need it.
I agree. And then another thing, you kind of mentioned the New Jersey situation. So I guess the easy one to bring up is the millionaires tax. And any comments on how that affects venture capital investing or angel investing in New Jersey? So, any comments about that?
I mean, I don't have to tell everybody. I mean, it really hurts small businesses, and it really, drives people away because, it's the millionaires tax hits pass-through entities. And so if you're if you're an S corp or a LLC or LLP or in that kind of format, that tax passes through to you, and so it has a big impact. I know. Not to digress a little, but I will. But I was just actually in my office reading an article again about, the desire to impose a transaction tax here in New Jersey for all financial transactions that go through New Jersey. We are going to drive those businesses right out of New Jersey. I mean, why would you stay here and keep your business here if you can put that processing in another state and not incur that cost? I mean, again, it's all about kind of cost and profits. And I get very frustrated when I keep seeing these looking for new ways of spending money versus kind of controlling our spending and making better decisions about things.
There you go. Yeah. So like the millionaire's tax, I guess on the flip side, on the one hand, like it's basically like ends up being like a capital gains tax if you sell a company. So like a venture cap, that's my understanding of it anyway. It's like an added to the long-term capital gains comes the New Jersey millionaire's tax, assuming you sold a business for more than $1 million, let's say. But then like you look at places like California, and New York City, and there's such a vibrant, entrepreneurial community there. Like, so why is that? They have even higher taxes than us in many cases. Any comments on that? It's a hard one. Sorry.
And no, it is a hard one, and it is a hard one. I think that people are driven to places and formations of businesses where they can, lower their costs, and I certainly think tax is a factor. I mean, being in other places, like New York City, offer different things and stuff, but. I do think in New Jersey here that it's, the high taxes that just completely drive people out. And so, and again, particularly you hear it a lot. I think you mentioned when people sell, businesses or sell things, that they end up with such high taxes on things.
Yeah, you could make no money for like your whole life and then get lucky once and then you're stuck with that tax. But anyway, right. I'm going to go to Mark in a second, but I see questions are coming in and some of them look great, and it looks like we're going to have time to get to those questions. So keep them coming, but I'm going to pass it off to Mark. And also, like, the Morris Tech Meetup is interested in helping entrepreneurs, and the opportunity zones are very interesting. And Mark's also an accountant, by the way, and he has a special interest in the opportunity zone. So Mark has a few questions about that, and I'm going to let him take that away.
Well, and thank you for this right there. Particularly with our affiliation with the Morris County Economic Development Corporation, and just our, I think our what the Morris Tech Meetup does around the state, and affiliation with all the other tech meetups, New Jersey Tech, Princeton Tech, United Tech, or Tech United. I think the opportunity zones were a celebrated part of the 2017 tax overhaul that the current administration in the White House has enacted. And I just want to get your thoughts on how you feel about the opportunity zones, and specifically, it seems in our district we have one main opportunity zone, which is Dover. I don't know. Let me change that. I know in Morris County the only one is Dover. I don't know with the borders of the district exactly if there are other ones, and you might be able to expand on that. But will we be able to perhaps expand the definition of opportunity zones, or like you said, maybe changing formulas for the care package? Can we maybe change the formulas of what an opportunity zone is defined as, and get different parts, maybe parts of Morristown, things like that?
So that is a great question, and it's actually something I've thought a lot about. And I will preface my answer by saying the one thing about, like, when I was involved with the writing of 529, the 529 accounts, it was something that evolved, and it continues to evolve to this day. There's continues to be changes that make that program better. And I sort of feel the same way about opportunity zones. I think that fundamentally it's a great idea. And I do think that, it's a piece of legislation and a law that can continue to evolve and meet the needs of, our economy. It's something actually I've been thinking a lot about, in this context of COVID and, and some of the areas that have been hit hard and things like that from COVID. I think we ought to be thinking about how we can put more money back into small businesses, into areas to revitalize them and things like that. Look, the biggest thing, we're going to face when we come out of this is, or finish coming out of this is, there's going to be a lot of unemployed people. And I think what the opportunity zones and funds offer is the opportunity to take capital and invest it in businesses, right? And create jobs. So I do think there is a great opportunity, in the future to help those, help them change and evolve and meet more needs. I will tell you, it's interesting, and I did put together an economic plan, and it's actually on my website. And we do talk about opportunity zones. I think that one of the things that I heard from a lot of businesses about is certainly in the selection process, that they would like to see it done on a more less partisan manner in terms of identifying and naming some of the opportunity zones. And that's certainly something, to take into account also in the future. But I do think, back to your initial question, I do think there's an opportunity to change them and to have them evolve and meet some of the more current needs.
Right. And I feel like there's, the higher profile cities like Newark and Jersey City really benefited, and they should. There's definitely a need there to have that additional investment as they can attract it. But I look at things like Dover, which again is the only opportunity zone in our county, and I think it's a wonderful town. I actually grew up in and around Dover in my childhood, and it once had a very storied history, and I really see that it's a great place to be revitalized by the opportunity zone. And I wonder if I don't know how much you know about Dover and can speak to it, but it just seems like it's a great with the right amount of investment or the right type of investment, that they could become more of a tech center and get away from kind of the manufacturing.
And Mark and I were running around like Dover with trying to get the government to buy into tech startups and investing in venture capitalists and all that, and they were very much into real estate. They just wanted to know about, can we develop a mixed use condo site here? And we're like, no, you want tech companies coming in here, and you want investments, and you want the big time. You don't just want real estate. Anyway.
I know, and that's another really valid point. I do think that we want more diversity, right, in terms of what the funds are investing in and things like that. And so I do think that that's something that ought to be looked at. And again, I kind of, my philosophy to tax policy is more of the carrot, not the stick. And so, maybe there's an opportunity to provide more incentive for investments like in tech versus in real estate, and approaching it in that manner.
Yeah, I feel like with what the opportunities have become, it's become, I like the way that you put it. It evolves, right? The legislation here will evolve, because it seems like the first step is they created the opportunity zones, and I feel like a bunch of billionaire investor class just plopped down real estate for their own benefit, and it didn't really perhaps translate to maybe jobs or an enhancement of the
maybe
community.
benefiting the people that are already there.
Right.
They brought other people in, but
so I wonder, so like you're saying, I wonder if, you know, there could be additional incentive that it's for business creation and not just, you know, build a building.
Right.
Yeah, another thing you said, which is interesting, is like maybe everywhere after COVID, maybe like every place should be an opportunity zone. I mean, it really is. These restaurants and everything, they're getting hammered, and it's really going to be a problem coming out of this.
Well, and that's why I think you have to really kind of revisit some of that, so that again you're getting capital put back into businesses and areas, and you know that create jobs, right? And that's, at the end of the day, that's what we all want.
Yeah.
So,
do you have thoughts on you know, transitioning to more economic development? Do you have thoughts on attracting businesses to the district and how that can be implemented, and you know, perhaps with more incentive towards, you know, newer technologies and getting more vibrant businesses in here?
yeah, no, I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's exactly what we want to do. I do think, you know, a lot of New Jersey's problems exist at the state level, but I do think that it is incumbent upon whoever is, you know, representing you in Congress to work with those leaders, you know, to find the solutions at the state level, as well as supplementing that and helping at the federal level. And so at the federal level, whether it's providing more tax, you know, incentives or more direct funding, I think that that's important, or changing existing programs. Like, you know, we talked earlier about the PPP program. I think for that moment in time, it was really helpful and great, but this pandemic has turned out to be a whole lot different than anyone imagined. And I know that the people, we had people constantly in our office and asking for help in applying for those in the EIDLs. And I was constantly on the phone to the Small Business Administration, both locally and in Washington, and asking lots of questions. And many people may have seen every other day, they came out with a Q&A at the federal level, because there were so many questions. And so I do think like programs like that, like it worked in the moment, but we need to change it. And that's certainly something, you know, that Congress is trying to do right now, not doing a very good job of it, but trying to, you know, again, make changes to that program so that it can continue to help businesses. And I think that's helping with programs like that, I think are essential. I also want to add, and I've said this repeatedly, I think the role of somebody representing you in Congress is not only just to pass laws, but to be your advocate in Washington. And so you're an advocate not only in Congress, but also at the agencies, and trying to affect change and change rules that benefit the district. You know, I'll give you a great, for instance, the Department of Labor has put out a rule now with regards to whether somebody is classified as an employee or an independent contractor. And it's a fairly favorable rule. And I think that the role of somebody representing you is to make sure that that rulemaking fits the people of the district, and to get the district heard. You know, we have a lot of people in this district who work as independent contractors. Obviously, a lot of people in the tech business do. I actually, even right now, work as an independent contractor so I could run for Congress. And so, you know, there's a lot of people that consult and do freelancing and things of that nature. And we want to make sure that we can continue to do that. And somebody's not going to change that on us. I actually think a lot of women use that. So that to me is also the role of this, is helping with some regulatory aspects like that to make sure, again, bringing more back for the district.
There you go. You have one more, Mark?
Yeah, just with the way that we've been existing for the last several months with COVID, and the way that companies have shut down and gone to remote workers, particularly in New York City, which has a large part of their workforce just kind of, I guess, went into the suburbs and all working from home. Is there a way to attract those businesses, or do you have plans maybe or thoughts on attracting those businesses permanently out here to New Jersey to really take advantage of the opportunity that the time has given us?
Yeah, no, I think there's a great opportunity to attract people. I mean, you've probably seen when our train stations were packed, they're not packed anymore. I mean, my husband's even someone that hasn't been to the city, went to the city every day and hasn't been there since March. So I think there's a real opportunity to attract them, but we can't enact things like a financial transaction tax to drive those companies straight out. So I think that, again, we have to work to decrease regulation, decrease taxes in the state of New Jersey. We've got to bring more resources at the federal level back to to Morris County. Again, I go back to the CARES Act, right? With money that could have been direct funding, you could use that money to attract businesses and provide them incentives for coming to here and moving their offices out here. So I think there's a lot that can be done.
Great.
Okay, so you're kind of already covered the future, I think, which is good. So if you don't mind, we'll take a few questions from the audience now. Is that okay?
Sure.
And let me get this one here. First one's from Mario, who always asks great questions. Mario Casabona, who actually runs Tech Launch, and he's asking about the Picatinny Arsenal and what we can do to keep it as a thriving base in New Jersey. Any comments on that?
No, I have several comments on that. I mean, absolutely, we have to keep that base as thriving and continue to get research projects and things of that nature to Picatinny. I mean, Picatinny is the largest employer in the district. And, we have to continue to make sure that it is. And again, part of that process is making sure that, Picatinny is getting the resources it's need and the allocations that it needs and the projects that it needs. And to me, that's not just a legislative job, that's also a regulatory job as well. So I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, that's crucial.
Okay, great. And somebody else was asking, it's Krishna, who we know. He's a regular too. He's talking about, I guess, the whole SALT tax situation and anything you would do about the SALT taxes, which is like, what does SALT stand for? I don't even know. I know it's property
right there,
taxes.
State and local taxes.
Okay, state and local taxes. There you go.
Yes. So, and obviously this was one of the problems, right, with the 2017 bill, that we got hit hard by the cap on the state and local tax deduction. And so actually, and again, it's on my website as part of the economic plan, I put out there an idea that we ought to look at. And the problem here with the SALT tax is because obviously here in New Jersey, we pay such high property taxes that we are hit hardest, right? And so when it's not just a red versus blue problem, it's more of a regional problem. And so, folks in other states like the Midwest or something who have lower property taxes don't really have a whole lot of sympathy for us here in New Jersey. And so I think that it's important when you look for a solution, you look for a solution that will fit others and a compromise. So one of the ideas that I put in my economic plan was to do an above the line deduction for property taxes. So it would be a direct reduction in income versus being subject to limitations on one of the schedules. So anyway, so that is one of the ideas. We have to fix the SALT cap. I actually had the ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee who hosted an event for me, and he joked around that he could see me on day one sitting in his office looking for a solution to the SALT cap. And I assured him that I would be sitting in his office on day one looking for an answer.
There you go. That's great. All right, this one I like too. So I had a question like this, which I skipped over for some reason, but Sam here reined me in a little, so that's good. So, there's a lot of people talk about business in New Jersey and helping businesses, but the new economy is really tech. And if you really look at the blockbuster growth in our economy, it's really all tech, or at least businesses that rely on tech. You could call Uber, you could call it a taxi service, but it's a service that relies on technology to drive people around, right? Maybe not so much anymore. But, anyway, but what could be done to focus on tech and biotech here in New Jersey and get these, and as Sam puts it, investable entrepreneurs here and more money, attract the investors and the entrepreneurs and mix them together and hopefully, what could we do here in New Jersey to make that happen like they did in New York and Silicon Valley?
So, and my husband is in the tech business, and so we do talk about this a lot. And I actually really feel that one of the fundamental things that we need to be doing is education, and doing more, in our school system as well as our colleges and things to build the resources so that we have the people want to hire, right? And that we have the resources. I think to me that's something that's so critical to doing that. So that that it drives the process.
Interesting. Yeah, and then actually, Kathleen also is talking a little bit about the pharma industry and biotech also, and we've lost a lot of those businesses, and some of them, a lot of them are going up to Boston, and I really don't understand it that much because it's another high cost of living area. But so why are they going there? And what can we do to stop that?
So, I mean, my understanding is that Massachusetts and the towns have been in Massachusetts and Boston, in the Boston area, have been attracting those businesses by providing incentives. Whether it's direct incentives or direct monies for moving their businesses, or it's through some kind of rebates or things of that nature, or through the state tax system and things like that. But I mean, they've just made it incredibly attractive for those businesses to move. So, and I do think we need to do more of that. And again, it's also something I put in the economic plan. I also think that for New Jersey too, we've got and the pharma industry, we've got to bring all those businesses back from abroad as well and incentivize those to move. I'd like to see them back in New Jersey, but and look for ways to drive them specifically to New Jersey. But I do think that certainly COVID has taught us that we should be less reliant on others for things like our pharmaceuticals and PPE and other things like that, and driving those manufacturing facilities back to the U.S.
And even that brings up a point of a former talk that we had probably a year and a half ago with the state of Israel, where they have a partnership with America, and they have some organizations that are trying to strengthen the ties between specifically the Israeli technology community and bringing them here. And it would be great to have them land in New Jersey and not New York.
Right. I mean, why not create? And again, I think you have to, I'm kind of I like all ideas. I'm the guy that throws it against the wall and sees it if it sticks. But why not look at like public-private partnerships and things of that nature, to find solutions for some of these issues.
Yeah.
All right, here's Mario again. So I didn't have the guts to ask you this one, so I'll let Mario ask it. If you were elected, would you differentiate yourself from towing the party line, especially when it doesn't benefit our district, and I guess how?
No, absolutely. And I know that people say that, but the reality of this situation is and my opponent has done this, if, you take your money from the party, then you're expected to vote a certain way. And that's not what I intend to do. I intend to be a completely separate voice for the people of this district. And I should also tell people, the other thing I did was sign a pledge on term limits, because I do think you need good ideas on a regular basis. And I do think turnover is important and stuff, that there's fresh blood coming in and new ideas. And I do think that part of the problem is that people get there and they get stuck and become beholden to the party. And that's just not my agenda.
Yeah, and we didn't want to get too political. We want to stick with like the tech and small business entrepreneurship stuff. But like, it really is amazing. Like, how is it possible that all these people vote exactly the same all the time? I don't care what party you're talking about. It's kind of silly. Like, every single person votes either yes or no for every single bill. How's that a thing? Like, you think that they're obviously not thinking for themselves anyway.
And it's arguable that the people that are the squeaky wheel kind of get a lot further than those that just kind of go along with the crowd.
So here's one from Kathleen, and she's asking, will you continue to support a tax credit of 10 to 20% for qualified investments, especially woman-owned companies?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And then, we're almost done here. It's like 10 before the top of the hour. We're going to try to keep it till under an hour. And then here, I'm sorry, here's one from Esther, which looks really good. In New Jersey, we have a number of immigrants who started profitable New Jersey companies that employ loads of people. And then, we have like a perception, at least, of anti-immigration administration. How do you feel about that?
So I hear about this issue all the time since my husband is in the tech industry. We have to fix this problem. And I do agree that the administration has taken the wrong stance on some of these issues, and they need to be fixed. And again, I think that it's part of people like mine job to go do that and explain why they got the answer wrong in their guidance that got put out there recently and continues to be put out there and stuff. But it it goes back to what you just said, what's driving, our stock market right now and the growth we're seeing is the tech industry. We can't hurt them with bad immigration policies. And so we need to fix it.
Yeah. So maybe do you have a question before we wrap up, Mark?
I got one more. A lot of this talk about the future and what New Jersey could become prompted me to think about something that's near and dear to my heart. I don't know how much you know about the blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but being so close to the center of finance in the world in New York, and with them kind of dispersing to the suburbs, I feel like it's a great opportunity to take advantage of the tremendous power of blockchain, and where I feel like we're losing ground to Wyoming. Not we are. Not that I feel like, we definitely are. Wyoming, of all places, is very much on the forefront of blockchain legislation. And I wonder, would you fight for some of the things that that's natural to our state, with all the thought leaders in finance here, to take an important position on blockchain and legislate so that we could take advantage of all that?
Yeah, no, and absolutely, and it's interesting. I'm not familiar with what Wyoming's doing, but it's I think it's really important that you, as the role of a policymaker, is like to look around and see what others are doing and what's working and what's not, and so I certainly think that in this area, again, you got to be willing to go to the next frontier, right? And I sometimes I feel like people are just so afraid of it that the answer is no. And so I actually tell my kids all the time, find a solution. Like, don't whine about it, cry about it, just find a solution. And I sort of feel like things like this in the financial world and others are things that we have to continue to learn, grow from, see who's doing it well, and adopt it if it makes sense. We there's always such this reaction to say no. I mean, I not to go back to my experience, but when we were first doing 529, the reaction was like, no, can't do that. And it was like, well, why can't we do this? And when we first enacted those accounts, they were actually taxable accounts. And it took more than 10 years to get people comfortable with the idea of making them tax-free. And thank God we finally did. But it was, I just sometimes feel like the reaction is like, no, without kind of fully looking at what works and what doesn't work and best practices and things like that. So looking at places like Wyoming, I would have never guessed that Wyoming was on the forefront of that.
Yep. They're going to have the first blockchain bank.
Wow.
First crypto bank, and that's regulated under the United States. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
529s go for the next step, maybe pre-tax going in, right? That's obvious. That's the obvious thing. But going back to New Jersey and COVID, I'm going to make this the last question because we're running out of time here. So like we have COVID and that's happening. And if you look at like what like San Francisco versus Silicon Valley, really Silicon Valley came to be because of San Francisco, and it was kind of like the overrun of tech in San Francisco. And I think we're kind of like, especially with COVID and all the CEOs actually live in New Jersey, right? Yeah. That's another thing. Do you see like, post-COVID, do you see like big things for New Jersey and, perhaps some big tech growth because of maybe not because of COVID, but because of our proximity and the other things we have going for us?
No, I absolutely think there's a huge opportunity. We just have to harness it the right way, right? And we have to, and again, I'm not a stick person, I'm a carrot person. And I will say this, like, I don't think $4 trillion of new taxes is what's going to attract businesses and tech to New Jersey. I think that it's keeping our rates low, incentivizing companies to come here, and doing more of those things, and making sure that we have more resources. Because you are right. I mean, I see it every day. You see it all over Morris County, and actually this whole area. People are working from home, and frankly, kind of getting used to being closer to their home versus hopping on a train and an hour-long commute each way. It's, and so you have to take advantage of that opportunity. And that's, a big part of what I want to be able to help New Jersey do.
All right.
That's great.
Well, thank you again. Thanks so much for doing this, and for everything, for answering all of the questions that were very focused. I know if you're not used to answering such focused questions, probably, but thank you so much for being here.
We really appreciate it,
and for spending some time with us. And good luck.
Thank you very much.
Best of luck.
Best of luck to you. Everybody vote. At least say
yes.
Everybody vote.
No matter what, vote.
All right. So I'm going to say goodbye to Rosemary. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. Thank you again, Rosemary. You have a fantastic rest of your day, and good luck.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Really quick. That was great. It was interesting. And just FYI, we'd love to have Mickey Sherrill on as well. And we were a little hesitant maybe to bring in somebody with a political background like this.
Mm-hmm.
And you're welcome, Arthur. Because it gets dicey sometimes. But anyway, I thought it worked out great. We stuck to.
We wanted to keep it to tech and entrepreneurship and employment and things like that. And
yeah, so maybe we'll do more of these. And thanks again to Rosemary. So just going on to the next events. So it's actually next Monday night. It's a 1 hour event you can watch for the Tri-County Scholarship Fund. And again, what we do is we take kids from the inner city and we send them to really good private schools. You got to check this thing out. And I just ask that you have a look at it. And if you're moved by it, if you could make some sort of small donation, it would be greatly appreciated. Remember, this whole thing's free. So I'm twisting your arm a little. This whole thing's free. So we'd love it if you could make a small donation to the Tri-County Scholarship Fund. So have a look at that. That'll be up live on our site. And then on November 17th at 4 p.m., we have Tracy Blowers, who works for Microsoft, has a special focus on Microsoft Teams and the cultural impact of working from home, as well as the whole COVID-19 workplace. I'm really looking forward to that one as well. Both of these will be virtual. This one went really well, I thought.
Yeah.
Things can go wrong when you're virtual. Other than the sun shining right in my eyes through the window, it went spectacularly. So thanks, Nancy and Mark and Nat also for all they did. And I
highly recommend this platform. What's it called again?
StreamYard.
Very easy to use and intuitive.
It's really made for broadcasting. Most of the others are made for one-on-one or one-on a few meetings. This is made to be a broadcast. So anyway, thanks for attending our broadcast, and thanks to all the Morris techies out there. You guys are the ones that really make this.
And I really hope we're in person soon. I know it's not likely, but at least hopefully early next year. I'm really looking forward to getting back to seeing everybody in person. And I think the first event that we'll have in person will probably be a social. It'll have to be a social, right?
Oh, that's right. All right. On that note, it's exactly 5 o'clock. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much for joining us.
Bye.
Bye now.